Pakistanis will go to the polls for a general election this week. The outcome would lead to the second peaceful transfer of civilian power in the country's history. But what role is the military playing, and how powerful is it? This is Inside Story. Hello there and welcome to the programme. I'm Laura Kyle. Tens of millions of voters in Pakistan will head to the polls this week to choose a new government. It's been a tumultuous few weeks for the country of nearly 200 million people. Earlier this month, an anti-corruption court found former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif guilty of corruption. His party is one of several contesting this election. If it all goes according to plan, it would be just the second time there's been a peaceful transfer of power from one civilian government to another. Now, Pakistan has swung between civilian and military rule since its independence from Britain in 1947. The run-up to this vote has been marked by political tension and attacks that have killed more than 150 people. The government has deployed hundreds of thousands of soldiers to monitor and guard polling stations. Well, let's take a look at some of the main candidates in this election. Shehbaz Sharif is running with the Nawaz faction of the Pakistan Muslim League. Now, he's the brother of the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who was recently found guilty of corruption. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari is on the Pakistan People's Party ticket. The 29-year-old is the son of former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto, who was assassinated in 2007. Now, he too has faced allegations of corruption. And former cricketer Imran Khan is the leader of the Tehreek-e-Insaf party, which is particularly popular amongst young voters. Khan has been vocal in his opposition to government corruption. Well, let's hear now from what two of the candidates had to say.
We can form a government in Pakistan where a minister will be afraid of corruption, that our National Accountability Bureau will catch a prime minister and ministers as it happens in Europe.
I want authority for you. I want authority to solve your problems. I want power so that the laborers could get reward for their hard work. I want authority so that the youth can get education and employment. I want power so that the farmers could get the price for their crops. I want authority for the women to get their rights. I want power to protect the rights of minorities. I want authority to empower democracy. And I will, God willing, succeed in this struggle.
Now, Pakistan's military was formed in 1947, shortly after the country gained independence from Britain. It's the sixth largest in the world in terms of active military personnel and the biggest amongst Muslim countries. It has seized control of several civilian governments over the years, enforcing martial law to restore order, and has dismissed members of parliament. And it's fought 3 wars with India, which killed at least 100,000 people. Plus, it's seen several standoffs on its border with Afghanistan. OK, well, let's bring in our panel now. And joining us from Islamabad, Maria Sultan, Director General of the South Asian Strategic Stability Institute. In Washington, D.C., via Skype, Michael Kugelman, Senior Associate in South and Southeast Asia at the Woodrow Wilson Centre. And also in Islamabad, Hamid Mir, the Executive Editor of Geo News. A very warm welcome to all of you. Maria, can I just start with you? What does the army want from these elections?
I think these are one of the most, in one way, watershed elections in Pakistan's history. The army's expectations are that it should, number one, it should be peaceful as far as the transition is concerned. Number two, of course, they want a government which should be responsive towards development as a priority, and of course corruption, which also should be there. But the bigger question over this, or the underlying tension which you can see, is primarily about the civil-military relations, and also the fact that the state institutions should not come at odds when it's coming to the issue of the state and when it comes to the state's ability to respond back. So that is primarily a couple of things which is at this moment at the back of the military thinking process.
OK.
And of course,
just something there, because there are a lot of people who've been questioning why there should be 371,000 soldiers monitoring this vote. They're noting that this is 3 times the number that we had in the last elections in 2013.
That is primarily because of the fact because the Election Commission has, number one, requested for it, and number two, because of the fact and the fear that maybe there would be rigging on the polling day. So you needed an honest interlocutor. Now, for that, the question is, will the other candidates be putting pressure, whether there would be civil administration which would be marking that? Because if you look at the actual election process, which requires both political parties' representatives, or for that matter, any number of representatives which are available at that polling station, to be there once the vote count happens. So it's never about casting the vote, it is always about counting the vote. So you want that process to be transparent, and you want that to be something in which people believe that their mandate has not been stolen.
OK. Hamid, let me just pick up on that last point, that the soldiers are there to ensure that there's a transparent election. Is that something that you're happy with?
I think I asked this question to the Secretary of the Election Commission of Pakistan, Mr. Babar Yaqoob, that why you are deploying the troops inside the polling stations. So they said that we think that there will be, we need a lot of manpower to maintain the law and order situation, especially in areas where the civil administration is not very powerful. So that's why we are deploying army troops inside the polling stations. Some of the political parties are raising a lot of questions on that. But I think that if a soldier is deployed inside a polling station with a weapon and in a uniform, I think he cannot interfere in the polling process, but he will be responsible only for maintaining law and order.
OK. How much military interference do you think there has been in this vote?
We have a history, and if we go through the history of Pakistan, so I can say that in the past there was a lot of interference by the intelligence agencies in our election process. Some of the cases were heard in the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and this interference is documented recently in the Asghar Khan case. But this time, there are some political parties who are saying that military should not be deployed inside the polling stations. And some of the political parties, they are not speaking openly, but they have written letters and they are talking privately to the military officials that they think that there is some interference. But the other side is saying that, no, we are neutral and we are not interfering. So let's hope for the best. And I think that whatever is happening, especially whatever happened last night in Rawalpindi, after the announcement of a verdict against PMLN leader Hanif Abbasi, there were slogans by his supporters against some state institutions. So I think that sanity must be prevailed, and I hope that military will not interfere in the electoral process, or they should be very careful.
Michael, we will get to you, I promise, in just a moment. I just want to pick up, Hamid, on that point that you make, Hanif Abbasi's sentence yesterday on Saturday. He was given a life sentence on Saturday, 4 days before the vote. But this is a case that's been pending in court for 6 or 7 years. And many people, as you've just said, do point to the military having pressured the courts to pass that sentence. And it's not the only one of its kind, is it, that we've seen against PLMN candidates?
You see, I am following this case since last 6 years. And actually, anti-narcotics force is involved in this case. And anti-narcotics force is headed by a serving army officer. And Hanif Abbasi was complaining since last 3-4 years that some military officials are contacting him and they are putting pressure on him, and they want that I should take dictation from them, and that's why they are trying to convict me in this drug case. And actually, the ephedrine, which is used in medicines, it is not used as a drug in Pakistan.
Okay, please don't go into the intricacies of the case because we haven't got that much time. I just want to move forward to see if this is a politically motivated case or not.
Yeah, there is a majority opinion in analysts here in Pakistan. Majority of the analysts, independent analysts, journalists, column writers, they think that it is a politically motivated case, and Hanif Abbasi is a victim of political
Okay.
vendetta.
Okay, Michael, what's the view from outside of Pakistan? I mean, a lot of media are looking at these elections, and the headlines are that the military is interfering on unprecedented levels. What's the view there from Washington?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at all of the developments of recent months, starting with some of those that have already been mentioned here, the fact that several very senior PMLN leaders have been sentenced to prison so close before the election, like Nawaz Sharif, the former prime minister, and his daughter Mariam received jail sentences, just within days of the election. And there also have been arrests of some PMLN members. There have also been censorship, media censorship of outlets that are perceived to be focusing too much on the PMLN, and they're perceived to be too favorable to the PMLN. And of course, the military itself in Pakistan, it does have a reputation for interfering or getting involved in politics in a big way when it's not ruling the country directly. And also, the military has sparred with the PMLN significantly during the last few years of the PMLN's time in power in terms of some decisions that and some moves that Nawaz Sharif did, such as publicly criticizing the military for not sufficiently against terrorists that threaten India and Afghanistan, or that are based on Pakistani soil. And I believe that Nawaz Sharif also suggested a willingness to speak more and engage more with India than the military would have liked. So all of this to me suggests that you can't rule out the fact or the idea that the military is trying to behind the scenes engineer some type of outcome that could undercut the PMLN's electoral prospects. But I don't think we should overstate the role of the military here. I mean, certainly the PMLN, I think, in my view at least, there is corruption in the ranks, and I think one could argue that the party did not do the best job of trying to explain all these questions about its offshore assets and all that. But at the end of the day, I think what the Pakistani army wants the most from an electoral outcome is a weak coalition government that would enable the military to have influence. And I think in that sense, there would be a need for the PMLN not to be able to sweep to an outright victory and absolute majority in the election. So it's a complicated story, and I think it's important not to necessarily subscribe to the dominant narrative that the military is completely stage managing something and that the PMLN, is completely innocent in all this. I think the middle ground is perhaps more accurate.
And absolutely. And also, Maria, not to forget that Imran Khan is a very popular candidate. He's standing on a platform promising to fight corruption, of course, which we've seen the PMLN absolutely tainted with over the last few years. He's also planning to be transparent and break with dynastic policies. He is very popular with the young, isn't he?
Well, you're spot on as far as popularity is concerned, but I think this is for the first time that all actors in Pakistan and Pakistan's national security stand tested. That means that the political parties have to, for the first time, actually come out and actually own different stuff. For example, Mr. Hanif Abbasi, the question of Efedine is not something which you can just set aside. Yes, there could be judicial activism, which you are seeing, and maybe that is leading to this, this underhand assumption. But the fact remains that there is corruption. The fact remains that there are other candidates of all other parties which are also being subject. Yes, there are bigger questions in terms of how much and what level of party leadership is being affected by this process. But let's not forget, the most important thing is that it is all pre-election. The most important factor would be done once the people go to the polls, because it is then that the people would actually speak and speak for Pakistan. And I think this is where most parties are actually afraid, whether it is PTI. Yes, they have the youth, but have they done the development work? No, they haven't. Have the PMLN done the gone forward on development? Yes, but have they dealt effectively with corruption? Perhaps not. Are they silent on national security issues? Is it just an India case? It's not so simple. I think there are not, because if you look at the PMLN policy, they have been very square. They have been on civil military. I would say there was an equation when it came to Afghanistan and even in terms of India, despite whatever the talk was. And at the end of the day, then there is also the bigger silent majority, which is not spoken, but which is emerging. These these are the other coalition partners, such as the MMA, such as the other independents, because it is going to be perhaps the most unknown factor, or the wild card which we're having at this moment, are going to be the independents, and it would also be the People's Party. What would its fate be? So I think at this moment every political party stands tested, along with the military, in which that how it's going to balance itself out, and at the end of the day, on election day, the people of Pakistan will speak.
Okay.
And once for all, at least we will have some clarity where the motions are going.
Okay, Mohammed, there's been quite a lot of coverage and criticism in the run-up to these elections, especially when it comes to the media. We've seen a lot of restrictions placed on Dawn newspaper. Its distribution has been disrupted in military areas, and indeed on GOTV, which is your channel. How have you felt the pressure?
You see, I am not a spokesperson of the GOTV, but as far as the facts are concerned, nobody can deny the facts that GOTV was shut down many times in last couple of months, and Dawn is also facing the same problems. These days, most of the geo anchors, including me, we cannot do live shows. And when we ask our management that who pressurized you not to do live shows, so they say that there is no pressure from the military, but this is our own arrangement. We don't want that anything against judiciary or army should go on air. So that's why we are doing recorded shows. So they say that there is no pressure, but many people, they are aware that there are some hidden pressures, and there is also a history of these kind of pressures, and this is not a new thing, because I am covering elections as a journalist in 1988. So this is my 7th, 8th election. So for me, situation was same in 2013. In 2008 election, I was banned. I was not on the screen. Pervez Musharraf banned me. So before that, in 2002, the situation was same. So in 2018, if GeoTV or Dawn or any other TV channel or newspaper is facing any pressure, this is not new. It's a long history.
Sure.
But if we compare the election of 2008 with 2018, so situation is slightly better.
Okay. Yes, can people talk, or are people talking a lot more openly now about the role of the military in Pakistan?
You see, I never heard questions from the political and intellectual elite of Punjab in the past about the role of military and intelligence agencies in politics. Whenever I go to universities now, the students, they ask me questions. Previously, I faced these questions only in Balochistan, in Sindh, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So a few days ago, I was in a university in Rawalpindi, and the young students, they were asking me these kind of questions, that why there is political management by those people who are not supposed to interfere in politics. And last night, what happened in Rawalpindi, outside the court, the anti-drug court, anti-narcotics court, the people openly raised slogans against some intelligence agencies and some institutions. And no TV channel aired those slogans, but they are available on social media. So this is, you see, as a citizen of this country, this is, I'm very much concerned about this situation, because I never heard these kind of slogans, these kind of questions, this kind of criticism in Punjab, because there is an impression that army belongs to Punjab, because Punjab is the biggest province. So I think, and I feel that there is realization within the army that this situation is not good, and if there is a complaint from any political party or any civilian institutions, the complaint must be addressed.
Okay. Michael, do you think this role of social media is a positive one, in that we've seen attempts in Pakistan to block the more traditional media, but as Hamid was just saying, it doesn't matter, because on social media, everything is available anyway?
Well, I mean, this is true. I mean, social media is a blessing and a curse in Pakistan and in every other country as well. I mean, what I feel is somewhat disturbing is that what we're seeing over the last few months is these efforts by the state in Pakistan to essentially target, crack down on those on social media that are seen as being overly critical of the military and the intelligence establishment. And I think that that may be a realization on the part of the state in Pakistan that social media is powerful. And I think as the state has cracked down more on anti-military critics or military critics offline in traditional media, that social media has become a bit of a redoubt and a bastion for the more liberal components of the country and those willing to keep criticizing the military, and that therefore there's a need to move into the social media sphere to crack down on those that are critical of the military there. And what we have seen over the last few months is, unfortunately, disappearances of some folks who have been particularly critical of the army. So, yeah, it's true that social media is obviously a very vibrant sphere, and it will continue to be so. But I think that what you're starting to see in countries like Pakistan, as social media becomes more influential, and you have these critics that have their voices amplified on there, there's a need to deal with those critics, so to speak, as well. So it's actually a rather precarious state of affairs.
I just want to move, we are running out of time, I just want to move on to more international matters. At the beginning of this year, Washington cut over $1 billion in annual security aid because of what it said was Pakistan's support for terrorist groups, and relations with the US have never been worse. Maria, is improving ties with the United States on anyone's agenda here? Does it even matter? Because traditionally, foreign policy has seemed to be the issue for the military only.
I think foreign policy is an issue for all Pakistani leaders who would be coming to power. Now, the moment they will take office, this is something which is going to be steering them back very squarely and very strongly. But the issue which we're dealing at this moment is the bigger question in terms of how different powers to be in Pakistan actually settle, and how these turf wars are managed. Listening to the two colleagues who were just speaking, I think there is also something which the Pakistani military said today, and that is that if there are claims that they're interfering, that the Supreme Court must investigate all these allegations. So there is also bigger responsibility for that. But there is a bigger, there has to be a fine line in terms of what constitutes in terms of being anti-military in terms of its political aspirations, or for that matter, its civilian, drawback in terms of engagement. But on the other hand, it's also in terms of whether to target the institution per se. So I think these are hard times, but most importantly, these are learning times, and this is how the democracy would actually mature in Pakistan.
Okay.
And we believe that eventually things will settle.
Okay, Hamid, just in the last minute or so that we've got left, are we seeing democracy maturing in Pakistan? It's seen as the second democratic transition between civilian governments in the country's history, but do you think it's going to be viewed as such?
You see, July 25th is a very important day, and I think some people, some forces, they tried the level best to delay the election, but they failed. And now some people, some forces are trying to manipulate the election. So I think that if they believe in Pakistan, if they have some love for, they have some respect for Pakistan, they should not try to manipulate July 25th election, because if this election will become controversial, then nobody will gain anything. Every Pakistani will be a loser. So I can only appeal all the people, all the institutions, that let's make a united front and try to make a transparent and free and fair election on July 25th.
Okay. Michael,
If there
just in
will
the
be
last
some
30
problem,
seconds, we've got,
everybody will be the loser, and I'm telling you, I'm warning them.
It's hard to say. I think that we're going to have a hung parliament. Essentially, there's not going to be any one party with an absolute majority. And there's going to need to be a need for a very fractious and perhaps extended negotiation to cobble together a coalition, which could take a very long time. And I think that, that brings to mind, there could be some very interesting power brokers, such as Zardari from the PPP, that could be in a position to try to negotiate in ways to bring their party into the fold somehow.
It's going to be a very interesting week indeed. Okay, many thanks. I do apologise. We have to stop there. We will keep discussing this topic here on Al Jazeera, and I'm sure we'll be revisiting it again on Inside Story. For the moment, though, Maria Sultan, Michael Kugelman and Hamid Mir, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website. That's aljazeera.com. For further discussion, do go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Laura Kyle, and the whole team here, it's bye for now.